Hello and welcome to Minivangelism, the driver's seat, where we talk about the Bible without the kids in the car. If the kids are in the car, go listen to something else, because here we're going to be talking about
writing in cursive
musical theater
and our own personal hell.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the driver's seat, where we talk about the Bible without the kids in the car. If the kids are in the car, go to a different episode. This one's just for the parents. Today we are talking about the parable of the rich man and Lazarus.
Yes.
All right, Anna.
Yes.
What is the version of this story that you inherited?
Buckle up.
Oh, really?
There was no video.
Okay.
But I remember talking about this story in 5th grade Sunday school.
That's specific.
Yes, because I remember Mr. Pardon was my Sunday school teacher.
Great name for a Sunday school teacher.
Right? And I remember he drew the underworld that's depicted in the story. He drew it on the board, and he had hell on one side, and I remember he drew little flames and stuff like that, and then he drew paradise on the other side. He didn't call it heaven, he called it paradise. And they were trees and flowers and clouds and all this stuff. And then I remember the big chasm in the middle.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling us, if you fell in there, then you would just fall forever. And part of me was like, well, then why wouldn't the people in hell just jump in the hole? I feel like that would be better than
yeah.
And
also falling forever kind of sounds fun.
I mean, kind of.
It's like skydiving, you know?
I feel like at one point,
eternally.
At one point, do you get bored and you're like, this is my life now.
Yeah.
So I remember vividly that drawing, and I remember him telling the story and seeing the little stick figures of the rich man and Lazarus and Abraham. And then I remember he went further with it, because we were like, okay, but what about heaven and hell? And then I remember him going further in the story, and we can talk about this in a minute.
Yeah.
Him going further and saying paradise is where people were prior to Jesus dying. And then Jesus came down and he cleared the place out, and then he erased the little chasm, and then he was and then hell just got bigger. And that was what he said.
Yeah.
And that's how I remember this story. And I've always remembered that. And the very first musical I directed when I started teaching was Godspell.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a scene in Godspell, and where Abraham is a hippie or whatever.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm directing it, I'm like, so do I tell the kids about the big chasm? Do I talk about the hole? Because I just remember on this chalkboard.
That's what you had.
Yeah. With the cursive alphabet above it. I have very specific memories of Sundays, because our church also had a school in it. So I remember there was a cursive alphabet, and we didn't learn cursive at my public school.
Cursive alphabet. Got it.
Yeah.
I heard curse of alphabet, and I'm like, tell me about this.
Oh, it's a very different. Y'all didn't talk about this. No. The cursive alphabet.
Got it.
Because we didn't learn it at my public school, and so I just sometimes I would get distracted in Sunday school and be like, I bet I could learn to write cursive.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. How about you?
Godspell, the movie, the film version
is weird.
Yes, but it's also the version that is I don't know that it's the first one I inherited, but it's the one that lives most deeply.
Yeah.
And what's cool is if you watch that movie, they go through the whole parable, and at the end, the person playing Jesus winks at the rich man and says, "Come on."
Yes.
And that's a choice. That's a directorial choice.
Yeah.
That implies that the end of the story is not the end of the story.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
My students watched it because I told them not to, because I didn't want it to color how they did it. But of course, if you tell them not to do something, they're going to. And I remember I taught at this private school. And this one kid comes to me and goes, so I watched it. Is that what acid is?
It's very much of its time. Which came first, Godspell or Jesus Christ Superstar? The movies.
Godspell, I think. Because Godspell was in the 60s. I don't know about the movies, but the book or the musical itself was in 68, I think.
Okay.
Whereas Jesus Christ Superstar was in the 70s.
Well, if listeners aren't musical people, they're not going to know what the hell we're talking about. But
Right.
but
we're going to have one very specific musical theater person listening that's going to be like, actually.
and like whenever you tell the story, you're doing interpretation. So if it's in a musical or just to your kids, like you have choices about how you tell the story.
Exactly.
Which is fun. Yeah, this story, it's
so
funny.
How old were you when you watched that movie?
Oh, probably early teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to be.
Maybe before 15. Yeah, my parents were pastors, so we watched some of the Jesus movies. Mm-hmm. Only the ones that they wanted us to see. But like Jesus of Nazareth was a televised one that we watched every Easter. It was super boring. That's what I remember about that one. But yeah, we watched Godspell, Jesus Christ Superstar. We watched that one later because it's like musically kind of intense. Mm-hmm. But we didn't watch VeggieTales or your VHS Hanna-Barbera biblical interpretation set.
The greatest story ever told.
That's it. Yeah. My parents saved us from those. What bothers you about the story?
What bothers me about this story? I think it's the interpretation of the story is what bothers me more than the actual story. We're dipping into some afterlife stuff, and it doesn't really gel with other versions of the afterlife in the Bible, right? Like this is just one of many versions of the afterlife that is described in the Bible. And so that's also that's just always something that's kind of sat with me. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. I think the same thing bothers me, that the degree to which we've taken this and filed it under afterlife affairs.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think that that's what the story is about. Mm-hmm. And you just said something that's really important that I think people that are either new to the faith or just starting to think about it differently, it's important for them to note that the Bible does not have a singular vision of what the afterlife is like. Yeah. It's got dozens. Mm-hmm. And most of them are just stories set in the afterlife. And so whoever wrote those stories or is telling those stories, they have choices about what they describe. They're not necessarily trying to, in the way that one commentator talked about it, it's not like we're getting a look behind the scenes, like behind the music documentary about the afterlife. It's just to help tell the story. And by and large, when we have a Bible that tells us 12 different things about the afterlife, part of the conclusion is we don't know. And that's okay. I think that a lot of the church over time has felt like it was really important to figure out exactly what it's like and how to get where you want to get. And I don't think that's what this story is really doing. What do you like about the story?
We kind of talked about this in Minivangelism. I like that there's a little bit of justice being served.
Yeah.
There's those I don't remember the name of the creator, but on Facebook, sometimes there'll be those stories where somebody is really mean to somebody on the subway, and they're on their way to a job interview, and they're really mean, and then they walk in, and the person they were mean to is the CEO of the company, and you're just yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
This is instant justice, right? Yeah. They both die, and the rich man finally gets what he deserves.
Yeah, and to the degree that Jesus' audience is the poor, which is pretty likely.
Yeah.
It's a story of good news and justice for the poor. To the degree that the audience is rich people, which is also decently likely because Jesus hung out with everybody, then this is a warning story that says, you think what you have came with God, but you can't take it with you. And B, you're going to miss it when it's all taken away. And it's interesting that in the afterlife, in this particular story, Lazarus isn't rich. No, he's with Abraham and hence with God. So it's not necessarily a get rich quick scheme where be poor now so that you can be rich later. Yeah. It's actually just subverting the value of wealth as a primary source of life or a primary indicator of what God thinks about you. Yeah, it kind of pulls the rug out from under that.
And I think it tells rich people too that the stuff you have doesn't make you better than anybody else. Yeah. Right? Right. We're still all people. We're still all humans. I was listening to something about the story where they point out that like even after death, the rich man is still bossing Lazarus around.
Yeah. It's still like, garçon.
Yeah. Fetch me my water, please.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rich.
Yeah. What about you? What do you like and not like?
I think the thing that I don't like is the degree to which, well, I think it comes from a good place. So when rich people like us, you know, kind of chronologically speaking, you know, like we live in the US, we have incomes, we have food on the table reliably.
Yes.
That makes us rich, relatively speaking. We're not the richest people in the US.
You sign my paycheck, you know.
So it's all relative. But I think to the degree that we're aware of either the things that we have or our love of things, or our love of money, then suddenly this story is a warning that we pick up on.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to be like this rich man. We want to be like a different rich person. Still want to be rich, but and I think that's the anxiety that leads people to figure out to start doing afterlife analysis. And I think there's way too much that has been given to us that we have inherited about just what the afterlife is like. And I think so. Again, I think it comes from a decent form of anxiety that says maybe my life's not all put together. I've got to get right. But then we start interpreting things that just aren't there. Yeah. Like in the King James Bible, where the rich man goes is translated as hell. In the Greek, it's Hades, which is a Greek word likely to describe a Hebrew word, Sheol, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But you're the Greek expert on the podcast, so
yes.
Tell us about Hades.
So first of all, Hades is not the place. Hades is the ruler of the underworld.
And that's what you get when you get Jews using Greek.
Yes. Well, and even the Greeks would like, he was so associated with this realm that like, they just called it Hades, or the realm of Hades, but it's actually called Tartarus. And
they have a good sauce.
They do. It's
Tartarus
excellent.
Sauce.
Yes. It's very abundant fish. No, so Hades, or the underworld for the Greek listeners, because Jesus wasn't just talking to Jews, right? Like these gospels would have also been written, right? Luke was the one that was like kind of writing more to Gentiles, wasn't he?
To some degree. Fun facts about Luke. He's writing more to Gentiles than other gospel writers. More to the poor or underclass than other gospel writers.
Yes.
And they think he was a doctor because of how much medical stuff is actually a part of his stories.
Yes.
Including
sores.
Oozing sores.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a choice to use Hades, right? Because you're using Gentile language. And they believed it was this just like afterlife. And there were different levels of Hades. So like you got there, you got a coin. You gave the coin to Chiron, who was like you've seen the guy driving the boat across the river Styx.
Yeah.
And so he would usher you into the underworld.
I've seen the Disney movie Hercules, yes.
Yes. So don't even get me started on that movie. First of all, the Greek version is Heracles. Like we can sit here and talk about that all day. We can do a special Greek mythology episode if you want to, because there are so many things wrong with that story.
I love knowing this one way to set you off. This is awesome. Okay.
Do you remember that one time I like said something about it and you were like, how is it different? And I was like, I can't tell you because there are kids in the room. But let me tell you. No. So Chiron would usher you across, and if you didn't have a coin or if you had not been prepared, like in the dead, like for your funeral or whatever, then you would just drift on the shores. And so there was you were just a shadow that drifted for eternity. And then when you got there, there were like 3 levels. So there was the fields of asphodel, which were for people that weren't really bad, but not really good. A lot of the heroes hung out in asphodel because they did good things, but they were also like horrible people, which we can talk about that later. And then there was Tartarus, which was like or it wasn't Tartarus. I don't remember.
Charybdis?
No.
Okay.
Tartarus, which is it was like the fields of punishment.
Okay.
So like that was the eternal torture side. And then there was the fields of Elysium, which were like for really, really good people. And that was like heaven. So in this version of Luke, you have the fields of punishment and the fields of Elysium, where Lazarus is living in rest and the rich man is not. And they were in the same place. Like, this is not a weird concept to them. But you had to go through judgment first. And so then like you were judged and then you were put on either side. And then like that's where you stayed and you couldn't leave. And yeah, so that was what the listeners of the day, that would have been the world and the realm that they were thinking about.
And the Hebrew side of things is, and my take is that they borrowed the word Hades from Greek to describe Sheol, which is simply the place of the dead.
Right.
It's like a place, it's where dead things go to be dead. There's not really consciousness after that. It's more like nothingness.
Right.
And for most of the Old Testament, Sheol is the only afterlife option.
Right. And so the fact that you have a choose your own adventure
right
underworld like says, okay, we're going a little bit deeper.
Right. And then Jesus comes back from the dead, and so does the other Lazarus, and suddenly like, oh, there are things that are possible.
Yes.
It's not just nothingness.
Yes.
And then we get really anxious about how do we make sure that comes out all right. And like the hot take is you don't really get to decide that. That's my take. That's not in our hands. All we can go on is who Jesus has shown us, what Jesus has shown us God is like.
Yes.
And that's good news.
Yeah.
And there's a psalm that says, even if I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. And in English translations, that word Sheol is translated as hell. So the Bible says, even if I make my bed in hell, you are there. And the story of Jesus plays that out too. That part of what the Bible tells us that Jesus is up to when he's dead is storming the gates of hell to free people from it.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's like the end of this story is not the end, and the end of the story that we have in our minds might not even be the end.
Right.
Because Christ, the Lord of all time and all space, gets to do what Jesus wants. Like, it's if Jesus wants to save you, Jesus is going to save you. And so then the question is, who doesn't Jesus want to save? And generally the answer is there's nobody on that list.
Yeah.
Jesus wants to save everybody.
Yeah.
So that's our quick conversation about what this story says about hell. And basically not much is what this story says about hell.
Yeah.
But a lot of other stuff has been said about hell that I know has done people theological harm. And we still walk around it because it's in like Looney Tunes cartoons that we're raised on. And not to mention it's been used in the church to scare the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, been there.
Yeah.
But I think too, though, like, I talked earlier about like the thing I like about this is that instant justice, right? Some people need hell. They need it. They need it to be real. not to keep themselves righteous, but to feel like there is some sort of justification for the way that they've been treated.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's some good I wonder stuff is if heaven is the good place, is it also a just place?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Bible is going to want to say yes. And what's fun to wonder is like, how can that be? How so? And in the Eastern Orthodox view, and this is biblical too, that like, just like you said about in Greek mythology, like part of the afterlife is going through judgment to whatever's next. And so just like the rich man didn't get to bring his purple linen robes through death, like that stuff's gone. You can't take it with you. And in addition is like the strife and conflict and harm also can't go into heaven. So it either has to be burned away or healed.
Right.
And that seems to be the promise that Jesus is bringing, is healing for the sick, the lifting up of the lowly, and the tearing down of the rich and powerful. That's the great reversal or equalization that Jesus is. When Jesus heals somebody, that's what he's saying. And when he puts somebody in their place, that's also what he's saying. That like the kingdom of God doesn't allow unmedicated sores. Nor does the kingdom of God allow unbothered wealth. That what Jesus is up to is going to heal sores and bother wealth. And so for contemporary believers, the invitation is to be about the healing of the sores and the bothering of wealth now.
Yeah.
Trusting in the healing of your own sores, being about the healing of others, and being bothered by wealth in general and inequality in general, and choosing to bother your own wealth, to give stuff away, to divest from the love of money and the love of power, and to choose to be a different kind of person in the world. So there's invitations in every direction, and part of the reason is whether you live in suffering and hurt, or in the lap of luxury, or some mixture. The bad news is you can't take it with you. The good news is you don't have to take it with you.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Something that, and I don't know if this will make it into the Minivangelism cut, but in my conversation with Coleman, because we just kind of talked about it, because he's the kind of kid that asks about this all the time. And I'm just like, we are learning about Noah's Ark. Like, this is this is not for the group, right?
Yeah.
So he finally got a space to just kind of talk about it. And something that I loved in his observation was hell was a very exclusive club. Which is the opposite of anything I was ever taught. Like, heaven was the most inclusive, like, gates are wide open, y'all just come on in. And then hell was like, you got to really done mess up to get in there. He said, he was like, you have a 99.9% chance of getting into heaven. But going to hell, you have to like make millions and millions and millions of mistakes. And you have to pretty much be making mistakes 24/7 and doing it on purpose, like every day of your life for a long life to get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so counter to what I was raised as. I said so in the beginning. Like, they were like, yeah, hell just got bigger to fit more people. You know what I mean? Like, that hell was the inclusive club and heaven was something that you had to like check all the boxes and know a guy to get into, right?
Yeah.
The guy to get into. But it was just such a different and almost like refreshing thing to hear for a child. And he was like, yeah, it doesn't scare me because I know I'm not going there. Like, I know Jesus loves me and God loves me. So like, I know I'm going to heaven. And it made me think of the hymn, Blessed Assurance. Like, Coleman has blessed assurance that he knows. He just, I've never had that confidence, which is why I'm in therapy. But like, I've never had the confidence of Coleman. And I just pray that everybody has the confidence of Coleman, that like, they know they're going to heaven.
Yeah. I love that. And it's a sign of the kind of family in the church that's raised him.
Yeah.
That has done the work of populating his imagination with hope, rather than fear. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then someday Coleman is going to mess up significantly enough that he will realize, oh, now I'm one of those people that probably deserves hell. And I hope that the church is there for him then.
Yeah.
To say, yeah, that's, that was bad. And somebody is ready to bring you back from the dead.
Yeah. You didn't uncrucify Christ.
Right.
You
Right.
did that.
That there's room for that too. And I love that. And I feel pretty angry at the church that gave you a different gospel. And I know it's really common. I joke with you about stuff that is stuck in the South. It's not stuck in the South. But I think it's better contested outside the South. But a lot from the South in the 19th century has distorted a lot of what the Bible actually says. Yeah. And so there's plenty of people that need to find their way to some healing around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I love that you brought up the other Lazarus.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about the story is that there's this kind of hint, wink, wink, about that Abraham says, like, I'm not going to be able to quote it perfectly, but like, nobody can get to you from here, to your brothers from here. And even if somebody was raised from the dead, they probably would never listen. And it's this awesome foreshadowing of what ends up happening. And then I think that's what the other Lazarus story is too.
Yeah.
It's a foreshadowing in the present day of what Jesus is up to ultimately. Mm-hmm. But it's not just a foreshadowing either. Like, I think part of the heaven and hell conversation is that we assume this all happens after you're dead. But part of what was so intriguing about Jesus is he was doing heaven things here. And so part of the interpretation that I love about that is that neither heaven nor hell are things you have to be dead to experience.
Yeah.
That indeed, like, the kingdom of heaven is here now. And whenever a rich person notices a Lazarus and gives a damn, that's heaven happening.
Yeah.
And when a rich person realizes that their wealth has not actually brought them divine happiness, that's hell. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have to wait. It will find you. And you can look for it. Like, you can go for it.
Yeah.
And so part of, I brought up the theological understanding of God's preferential option for the poor. That was a big thing in the 70s, especially among liberation theologians in South America and elsewhere, mm-hmm. where there are these poor people's movements suffering under communist or other kinds of dictatorships. And the church is the one that says, no, these Lazaruses, they matter, and you can't do this to them.
Right.
And the biblical reason that the church felt like it had to say that was because that's what God is like, that you're forcing these folks to live in hell, and heaven is actually available to them now because of God.
Right.
And so in that sense, the demand for justice, not just in the afterlife, but now, is based on stories like this that say this is what God is like, this is what God cares most about, and the rich people just have to deal with it. And then there's the added bonus of, and maybe Jesus can actually save the rich people too.
Yeah. He winks at him and says, "Come here."
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, and something you pointed out in Minivangelism that I loved was, and this is something that I think our human brains tend to forget, is that the rich man didn't earn his wealth through being a good person, right?
Right.
Obviously. But Lazarus also did not earn his suffering through being a bad person.
Right. That wealth or poverty are not actually moral categories.
No. Sickness, health are not moral categories. Right. Like, all of that is not a moral. There are some things that you can do that can lead to consequences that are physical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some.
Yeah. What were those swords from?
Exactly. Or, I think about, like if someone is incarcerated, or if someone is,
Sure.
You drink, you drive, you get in a car accident, right? Like, those are consequences of your actions. But that's not punishment from God.
Yeah.
Right? Like, God doesn't, God's blessing or favor or not blessing and not favor are not necessarily based on that.
Yeah. And God gets to decide who gets blessed or favored or not.
Yeah. It
God
rains
just
on the just and the unjust.
right. But when God does make a call, God tends to make a call on behalf of the underdog or the forgotten or ignored.
Yeah.
Which is really informative.
Yeah.
Like that's a different kind of God than we assume.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that blessing, the rich man's blessings, right? He had all of this stuff. Lazarus ended up outside of his gate. You know what I mean? And how easy would it have been to say, "Oh, this is why I got it,"
Yeah.
in order to bless other people.
Right.
Right? It's not to hoard this wealth and continue to make myself richer.
Yeah.
It's to bless this man who's sitting out here. And can I go off on a tangent for a minute?
I was about to wrap us up, but sure.
Oh, why?
Go ahead.
It made me think of we went to this place here in Virginia called Rising Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how they provide people there. It's a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness or experiencing poverty and things like that. And they taught the kids about the importance of cleanliness, the importance of clean clothes, providing showers, good hygiene, and stuff like that, and nutritious food. Because when you eat nutritious food, you're healthier. If you have access to showers and things like that, you're healthier. And then being clean and healthy and all those things provide opportunities for them to go and get out of this poverty, right? That they're experiencing, get out of this homelessness that they're experiencing. And the rich man I just wonder if the rich man walked by Lazarus and was like, "Get a job, beggar." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if he had just given him some healthy food and maybe like bathed him and he wasn't walking around with open sores, he could have found his way out of poverty.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my progressive tangent for today.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I also I don't think we still don't have poverty and wealth figured out as a society. If there were a really simple answer, we might have had it before. So it's complex and complicated. But one of the most significant things the Bible says is, if you're one of my children, you can't forget about the poor.
Yeah.
You can't explain it away. You can't ignore it. They're my people too. Mm-hmm. In fact, they might be my people even more than you are.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. How do you want to talk to your kids about it, or what do you want to keep in mind if you talk to your kids about it?
I think when I talk to my kids about it, it definitely is going to be the whole focusing on things this side of heaven.
Yeah, sure.
Than focusing on the stuff outside of it. I've gotten into the habit now of when we talk about parables, which is not all the time, but sometimes they come up, especially when we listen to these episodes, of asking them, like, where is Jesus in the story? And what do you think this says about Jesus? And just having them think about that. And it's a good way of reading the story if you already got those, like, Where's Waldo glasses in mind.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I love that. I think my kids haven't started talking about like heaven, hell stuff, really. They don't watch Looney Tunes because nobody watches Looney Tunes anymore.
Because it's 2024.
Exactly. But I know that like you said, like it's come up in like children's ministry and stuff like that. And I've had a couple of parents reach out and say, like, my kid's really wondering about what happens after we die. And the tool I would want to have at my disposal and to give to parents is I don't know. Like it's an okay thing to say. I'm not sure about it. But if you have to have something to say, you say, I'm not sure about it, but Jesus is. And I trust Jesus to figure it all out.
Yeah.
Because part of it is also figuring out where's that question coming from the kid? Is it just curiosity? Is it that hell sounds adventurous and and we're watching shows and reading books with good guys and bad guys and we want to know how it all ends? Mm-hmm. But I think like the risks are to give a really clear version of the story that you have no control over what that does to the kid. So I'd be more interested in figuring out what does the kid think, and giving them a chance to say, I think it's like this, and then we would be able to say, maybe so. We'll keep reading the Bible and see what else we learn.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, this comes up a lot in our conversations, but we don't have to have all the answers, and it really is okay. And if your kid's asking the question, it's probably because they have their own ideas that they just want to get out.
Yeah.
And double check to say, if I say this, am I still safe in this house? And generally the answer is going to be, yeah, we can still wonder about that. Mm-hmm. There was a time when you were getting a lot of those questions, and like, I wrote a pretend memo about like top 10 things
I loved it.
Parents should know about like heaven and hell. It is pretty much like 10 different versions of, we don't really know. But
I loved it. And then you were like, hey, take a look at this. And I just was like, here are all my questions.
Yeah.
To which the response was, we should just go to lunch.
Yeah. I think like part of the iconography, again, like Christian art has a lot to say about this. There's some Christian art that shows like the 10 plus levels of hell and different kinds of torture you experience in different places, like Dante's Inferno kind of stuff. Yeah. But some of the earliest and oldest Christian art of even just depicting the resurrection is Jesus pulling Adam and Eve up out of their graves. That if you want to know what the resurrection means in a picture, that's what it is. And that is biblical, that's historical, that's traditional. And whatever that picture says, ponder that. And take heart.
Yeah.
You know, try not to let afterlife affairs run your faith. Because there are affairs before death that are to be enjoyed and to be listened to, and to be ways that we can actually love one another without having to die.
Yeah.
You know, that the kingdom of heaven is now. And so whatever that picture says, go live that now. Go trust in that, and go reflect that image in your regard for your children and your neighbor.
Yeah, I like that. What is your personal version of hell?
When I'm really hungry for French fries and my friend won't give me any.
Okay.
No, I think having disappointed somebody I care about.
Oh no.
That's all the hell I need.
Every episode, you just give me more and more ammunition to just. Next time I really want to stick it to you, I'm just going to be like, hey, Drew, I'm really disappointed in this.
Or when I know that the most comfortable thing would be to lay down on a couch right now, and I can't. It's this is like a new thing now that I'm getting older. It's like at some parts of various days, it's like, I got to be horizontal right now. And when I can't do that, that's torture.
It's your personal hell.
What about you?
I recently saw an ad for another church, and please don't be offended if you go to this church and you're listening to it, but it was for their children's ministry was doing a lock-in for 3rd through 5th graders, like an overnight lock-in.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd go for sores.
That's one. And I think the other one is when the pastor says that they have a short sermon planned, but then they don't tell you about the video that they're showing after the sermon. So you plan a short pop-out church, and you're waiting to release the kids from children's church, and you've already ended 10 minutes ago, and now you're on your 3rd round of hangman, but we don't call it hangman, we call it apple tree. And the kids are getting restless, and you don't have snacks. That I don't know. That's just a hypothetical.
Yeah. See, a different person would now exploit knowing that that's hell for you. But I'm so afraid of disappointing somebody I care about that now I just have a complex. Thank you for that.
They balance each other out.
All right. I think that's it for today.
I think that's it. We're
right.
done.
Thanks so much for being a part of today's episode. Anna's going to tell you about how you can be in touch with us.
Yes. So if you would like to send us an email, if you have any I Wonder questions or Stump Pastor Drew questions, or if you want to tell us what your version of hell is, or just if you want to share with us how you were raised or things about those stories that make you feel uncomfortable. We love engaging in with discussion with our listeners. You can send us an email to minivangelism@gmail.com. Or if you want to reach out to us on social media, you can find us at Minivangelism. Feel free to follow us, share our page with other people. We just love to get the word out there and we'd just like to know who's listening and how we can be a better service to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen to our podcast. Once again, it just helps us see who's listening and how we can better serve you. So,
and I think if today's we hit on some big, deep subjects today, if you have thoughts, you can certainly reach out to us. But if this brings up stuff for you about the version of heaven or hell that you inherited, or our responsibility to the poor, or the nature of wealth, I want to encourage you, just talk to somebody about it. I mean, I think that's part of what the parables are for. Is they generate wonders and they generate conversation, and don't let the conversation stop in your car. Talk to somebody about it. Say, hey, I was listening to a podcast and it made me think this or feel this. Whether that's talking to us or just your friends and neighbors.
Yeah. And if you're looking for a church home or just a place to worship on Sundays, you can visit us. We are Grace United Methodist Church in Manassas, Virginia. We also stream our services online. You can find us at umcgrace.org.
All right. I'm going to go start studying up for the next one, because I'm 2 for 2 on parables. I got stumped on.
Those kids are vicious, man.
Yeah, so I got some studying to do.
All right. Well, see you around.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are hosted by Anna Burrell and Drew Colby. Theme song written by David Burrell and produced by Evan Setzer. The theme song was performed by David Burrell, Drew Colby, and Evan Setzer. Podcast, sound design, and editing done by David Burrell. Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are a ministry of Grace United Methodist Church in Manassas, Virginia. For more information, check out umcgrace.org.